Now let's zoom out from Spain and travel to Brussels, where our next speaker has come from, to share with us some insights about the European Commission's perspective on the future of aviation. Please welcome Henrik Hololei, Director General for Mobility and Transport from the European Commission. Henry, over to you.
Honorable Minister, Mr. Al-Bakr, Chairman of the Board of Governors of IATA, Mr. De Juniac, Director General and CEO of IATA, Mr. Gallego, CEO of Iberia, and our wonderful host. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's a great honor for me to be here with you today. I appreciate the invitation, but above all, the excellent cooperation we have had with IATA over so many years. We are good partners who listen to each other, and we want the same thing, the best possible future for the aviation industry and maximum connectivity for the traveling public. The title of this conference, Wings of Change, perhaps matches more than in the past the pace at which change is happening in the air transport industry. We are living in a dynamic world and experiencing a fast-developing aviation sector. Let me start with the positive aspects. European aviation has proved to be globally competitive and resilient. The growth of European aviation during the last years has been encouraging, but we all know that after good times, usually more challenging times occur. And the real resilience and strength of the European aviation industry will be measured then. For that, we need to have in place a modern, stable regulatory framework that is capable of addressing current and emerging challenges, embracing our partners and delivering partnerships. Prospects for aviation, as you all know, are looking good. The latest IATA forecast predicts 8.2 billion pax globally in 2037. This is more than twice the traffic we had in 2017. Such prospects of global growth are also good news for the global economy, for travelers, and for the tourism industry. But let's also be aware of the challenges we are facing long, medium, and short term. And let's make sure we have a holistic view of the sector in mind in addressing them. Last week, the Commission published its autumn economic forecast for 2018. The presentation was accompanied by a message that we are experiencing, quote, sustained but less dynamic growth amid high uncertainty, unquote. While the snapshot is fine, growth around 2% forecast for 2019, there is some deacceleration of economic activity with risks pointing for further downsizing, and the growth also going downwards in Europe and globally. It's no news that we are living amidst a volatile global environment, and we are well aware that global uncertainty, instability, and unpredictability could also have a significant impact on the aviation sector. We are also well aware that this background is paired with unpredictable oil price developments, adding more to the uncertainties. Let's also not forget that the global political developments affect civil aviation, and over the last years, we have witnessed civil aviation being used to advance regional political goals. The Commission has underlined many times that we need to make sure that the integrity of the Chicago Convention is preserved and not used to advance political agendas. Over the last years, the aviation sector in Europe and beyond has benefited from two particular factors: lower oil prices and structural reforms that were made by most airlines during the first 5 years of this decade. The low oil prices at the same time have coupled with a steady increase also of non-fuel costs. My point is not to paint a gloomy picture at a time when many airlines are posting the best results ever, but it's also my responsibility to deliver the messages that the facade might be prettier than the interior, and to make sure we all realize the global developments as well as potential effects to the sector and beyond. If we come back to the issues we can and we should be able to address, then let me go straight to the point. Capacity in the air and on the ground. This is, to me, the major aviation-related challenge Europe is facing today. Scarce capacity on the ground and in the air has the power to limit the growth and competitiveness of European aviation and to limit the connectivity that is enjoyed by people. Whereas safety and security, two sides of the same coin, remain always our number one priority. Squeezing more capacity out in Europe must be our main focus. The last months have been a stark reminder of the increasing lack of capacity and equally give us some pre-taste for what is to come in the future if no action is taken. By October 1st, we have accumulated in Europe 16.9 million minutes of en route delay, nearly twice the delay accumulated for the whole year 2017, with the average delay being 19 minutes. This is just not sustainable. Even if we take into account the current airport capacity expansion plans, according to Eurocontrol, by 2040, 1.5 million flights cannot take place due to the capacity constraints, and 160 million passengers will be unable to fly. Providing more capacity is a crucial issue for the future of European aviation. Or should I say that without addressing the capacity crunch, there is no bright future for European aviation. The forecasts for the next 2 decades foresee about 550 to 600 million new passengers in Europe. This is, on one hand, a good challenge to have, but on the other hand, if we would not be able to manage this, a disaster possibly waiting to happen. However, we must see the glass half full and not half empty. And we need to do all we can to make sure our kids and grandkids see aviation as an opportunity to connect people and places, but not as an unpleasant experience without great excitement and stepping in a plane should bring to all of us. What is important now is to realize the seriousness of this issue and to undertake measures in order to address this. It's just not talk or paper or even ideas that take us forward. It's only by real action that can make a difference. We all agree that we need to make our ATM system more efficient and make sure that the capacity, staff shortage that we are experiencing this summer will not be repeated in the future with the same intensity. And we are working towards this, thinking out of the box, and for sure we will, together with Eurocontrol, put concrete proposals on the table for short-term but equally for medium-term solutions. However, this means that all actors in the aviation value network will need to contribute to that. I think you all agree that many ANSPs cannot continue doing the same, perhaps a bit more and a bit better. It would not address the structural issue we are facing or the key challenge of the future. So we also need to change our thinking, attitude, and the way we have addressed the existing challenges. A holistic view is essential. As the capacity crunch is not only in the air, but equally on the ground, it's absolutely essential that airports increase the scarce capacity and provide more efficiency. But they also need new investments in order to satisfy the growing demand that is substantiated by the positive forecasts. If we all agree, and in fact we do, as the poll at Vienna Aviation Summit a couple of weeks ago sparklingly showed, 81% of the respondents replied to the question, in which strategic area do you think is still most to do? Capacity. So we agree. We also need to be consistent in what we really say and do. I can assure you that DG Move takes this very seriously, and our actions related to the aviation sector will be driven by the capacity drive. This is in the interest of European aviation and equally in the interest of all our partners beyond our borders. We have recently launched several important initiatives to pave the way for a modernized ATM system, such as the airspace architecture study and the Wise Persons Group, whose report will be respectively available later on next year, probably in April. An essential element is the cooperation with our neighboring countries. Interoperability needs to be ensured, and we are fully committed to encourage and support our neighbors to adapt the EU standards and technologies to achieve the full potential also of the ATM modernization. To address all that, we must look at the bigger picture and see the airport charges, airport investments, traffic distribution rules, and allocation of slots in one larger, mutually influencing context. What I cannot accept is if we want to limit mobility and limit aviation and try to use the capacity crunch to advance anti-competitive agenda. This dear ladies and gentlemen, will not fly. It will not even and should not even take off. Either we are all in it together, regulators, key stakeholders, all actors in the aviation value network, trying to improve the European aviation environment, making sure Europe stays globally competitive, our people would have the widest number of choices for connectivity with affordable prices, or we accept that we will face a capacity crunch in the medium term, accepting to ground flights and letting down our traveling public. The choice is ours to make. Let me now turn to another area that will shape the future of the aviation sector and that the Minister already hinted a bit to: digitalization. This is a great opportunity, but it can also be a challenge if this is not addressed in the right way. Digitalization is already significantly changing the airline industry, and the airlines have to be ready for that change. They have to manage that change and seize the opportunities of growth, build partnerships, and maintain control over the product. The way people travel, the way they see travel, is changing fast. It's predominantly the millennials that foster this change, and they will be in the forefront of new expectations. It's also the tech companies who are rapidly expanding into many areas. Amazon is already a big player in developing drones, but also in shaping the drone commercial market, regulatory framework, and business models. There is just one step from civil aviation. Competition is good, but it's hard to compete when somebody else owns the data in relation to the client's habits, preferences, lifestyle, and even hairstyle. How can you compete against that? I do believe that strategic partnerships are absolutely essential, but it's equally essential to maintain a strong grip over the distribution layer and to team up with other aviation partners as well as tech companies. I'm very much afraid that if you miss that, you will miss the opportunities and you might miss the last plane taking off, in a manner of speaking. I'm encouraged that IATA, over the last years, has put a lot of efforts in delivering on the NDC. It would be an important step that allows airlines to maintain a strong grip of the modernized distribution layer. At the Commission, we are also looking at the code of conduct of the CRSs, and we are keen to make sure that these rules are fit for purpose for the years to come in a very different environment that we were 10 years ago. Today, big data and artificial intelligence are, for many, still just buzzwords, but they are going to significantly shape the way we travel, and they will bring a new change to aviation. I would not dare to guess what that change would be, but believe me, it will be significant. The regulators, as well as the economic operators, could struggle to find the right tune and the right instruments to address this and make sure that the equal opportunities to all market participants would be maintained. For that, we need to work together and get also inspiration from each other. Over the past years, we have seen a growing global tendency towards protectionism, nationalism, and widespreading populism. This is, to me, incompatible with the agenda we pursue. Opening up the markets has fostered air travel and has made people to go around the world. It has made the world also smaller to all of us. Globalization has helped to tear down the borders and create a lot of business opportunities. It made the world a better place, and as my good friend Alexander says, it made aviation the business of freedom. Against that background, I believe that connectivity within the EU and connectivity from the EU to destinations around the world should be in the center of our policy making. Global open markets do not mean that there are no rules. On the contrary, the predictable legal frameworks, like our comprehensive aviation agreements, serve and protect all of us and provide genuine partnerships, new commercial opportunities, and significantly improved connectivity. Our approach in the neighborhood region and our offer to all our global partners is to establish a process of market opening and integration on the one hand, and the regulatory harmonization towards the EU rules in all areas of aviation on the other hand, bringing us closer together. The impact of our aviation agreements with our neighbors has been particularly significant and positive until now. The figures actually do speak for themselves. This is all good. However, the potential for further benefits and opportunities is still tremendous. The Commission is therefore advocating pursuing a much more ambitious EU external aviation policy that puts Europe in the driver's seat for shaping the global aviation environment. Soon, I expect also the EU to conclude historic comprehensive air transport agreement with ASEAN, and there are good discussions ongoing with Qatar there are also discussions ongoing with Turkey and Azerbaijan. Early next year, we will open up negotiations with UAE and Oman, and there is more to come. More flights and more aviation would also need, ladies and gentlemen, the license to grow. This relies heavily on the social acceptance and the capacity of the sector to act sustainably and limit CO2 emissions significantly. For that reason, Europe is more than ever committed to making a difference, and European states have been spearhead for establishing a robust and credible CORSIA. I would like to thank IATA for the excellent cooperation and for all the efforts they have undertaken in this context. However, there is still work to be done, but we are moving in the right direction. To date, 75 states worldwide, including the whole of Europe, of course, have volunteered to offset their carbon emissions right from the initial phase of the scheme, which is today around 76% of the international aviation activity. It's a good basis for future actions. Lastly, let me mention Brexit. The UK and its strong aviation industry have played a key role in developing the EU internal aviation market, and we are sad to see them leave this. Today, we should be prepared for any potential scenario, and all stakeholders must take steps to mitigate the potential effects as well as address the potential impact. I do not yet have a credible answer to the main questions, but first and foremost, the withdrawal agreement needs to be concluded, and then we can engage in sectoral discussions, including on aviation. Ladies and gentlemen, the overall prospects look encouraging for the future, but there are many challenges to overcome in the coming years. For that purpose, I wholeheartedly welcome also IATA's European Competitiveness Campaign, and I suggest that you continue to maintain this holistic approach and consider even more topics as part of this important framework that you intend to pursue. Aviation is a truly global industry and will need global solutions. I have no doubt that together we will continue to make a difference, a positive difference. And you can count on the Commission and my personal commitment in doing the utmost in maintaining a strong, globally competitive and future-oriented European aviation sector. Thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to address you and for your attention. Enjoy the interesting discussions to come. Thank you.